before parental controls, before content warnings, before anyone could check what their kids were watching at 2 a.m. on cable. These 11 films existed in that gap, and every single one of them found exactly the audience they were looking for. Let's talk about all of them. Private Lessons, 1981. Start here because this one set the template for everything that followed it in the decade. A 15-year-old boy is left alone for the summer with the housekeeper while his father travels for work. The housekeeper, played by Sylvia Crystal, begins seducing him. The chauffeur is running a blackmail scheme underneath all of it. It made $26 million on a budget of roughly nothing in 1981. What nobody talks about is how genuinely strange the film is underneath the surface. Crystal brings a melancholy to her performance that the premise doesn't call for and the film doesn't quite know what to do with. The blackmail subplot creates a paranoid tension that keeps cutting against the fantasy the marketing was selling. It landed on cable almost immediately and became one of the most watched films of the early 80s by teenagers whose parents had absolutely no idea what was on the television downstairs. The decade's raunchy teen film explosion starts here and almost nobody gives it the credit. My Tutor, 1983. Same premise. A wealthy teenage boy fails French. His parents hire a live-in tutor for the summer. She's young, she's a European, and the summer goes in directions his French grade doesn't capture. Karen Kay plays the tutor with a warmth that makes the film feel less predatory than the setup suggests, and Matt Lattanzi as the kid is charming enough that you root for him even when the whole situation is obviously ridiculous. What makes My Tutor interesting in retrospect is the subplot running alongside the main story. The teenager's friends have their own summer adventures involving a brothel, a jealous boyfriend, and a series of escalating disasters that are funnier than the main plot. The film keeps cutting away from its own premise to watch these side characters fail at everything, and those sequences hold up better than anything involving the central romance. It found its audience on VHS and cable, and stayed there. A perfectly constructed delivery system for exactly what it was advertising. Parents found the tapes got confiscated, kids found other tapes. Screwballs, 1983. 5 high school guys at Taft Adams High School spend the entire film trying to see the school's most popular girl without her top on. That is the complete plot summary. Rafal Zielinski directed this Canadian film with a commitment to pure escalating absurdity that separates it from the American films doing similar things at the same time. The schemes get increasingly elaborate and increasingly ridiculous, and the film never pretends any of it makes logical sense because logical sense was never the point. It's crude, cheap, and completely aware of both. The humor operates on the principle that if you commit hard enough to a stupid premise, the commitment itself becomes funny. Screwballs commits completely. It spawned a sequel nobody asked for and built a cult on cable that the theatrical release never suggested was possible. A perfectly calibrated piece of low-ambition filmmaking that delivers exactly what it promises and nothing else. 1983, that was enough. Hardbodies, 1984. An older man hires 3 young guys to teach him how to meet women on the beach. The young guys proceed to have a better summer than anyone who hired them. Grant Kramer plays Scotty, the beach bum teaching the lessons, with a relaxed confidence that makes him genuinely likable rather than just a walking fantasy. The film spends more time than you'd expect on the older men learning to be human beings again, and that subplot gives Hardbodies a warmth that the premise doesn't suggest it will have. The California beach setting is shot like a postcard that's aware of its own artificiality. Everything is slightly too perfect, slightly too sunny, and the film leans into that aesthetic rather than fighting it. It made enough to spawn a sequel, found its real audience on VHS. One of the most purely pleasant films on this list, which sounds like faint praise and isn't. Making something this relentlessly cheerful hold together for 90 minutes is harder than it looks. Weird Science, 1985. John Hughes wrote and directed this about 2 socially invisible teenage boys who use a computer to create their ideal woman. And Kelly LeBrock materializes and proceeds to spend the film making their lives simultaneously better and completely unmanageable. Hughes was operating in a completely different register here than 16 Candles or The Breakfast Club. This is pure wish fulfillment fantasy played at a higher volume than anything else in his filmography. The film doesn't pretend the premise makes sense, it just asks you to accept it and runs. LeBrock understood exactly what the film needed from her. She plays Lisa as someone who genuinely likes these 2 awkward kids and wants to help them, which gives the whole thing a warmth that pure fantasy films usually don't have. Anthony Michael Hall and Ilan Mitchell Smith as the boys are completely believable as social disasters, which is why the fantasy works. Parents found this one confusing. It was John Hughes who made wholesome teen films. Except this one had Kelly LeBrock and Bill Paxton as a biker and a missile coming through the living room ceiling. The VHS copy lived at the bottom of a lot of closets. Fraternity Vacation, 1985. Two fraternity brothers take their nerdy roommate to Palm Springs for spring break. Tim Robbins is in this, playing a fraternity bro. Before The Player, before Shawshank, before anyone knew what Tim Robbins was going to become, the film is exactly what the title promises and spends its runtime delivering that promise with reliable efficiency. The competition between the fraternity guys and a rival group over the same girl gives the film a loose structure to hang the set pieces on without getting in their way. What makes it worth mentioning beyond the obvious is the Palm Springs setting. The film captures a specific mid-80s resort town atmosphere that no longer exists in quite that form. The pools, the hotels, the specific way that money and sun and complete freedom from consequences combined in that particular place at that particular moment. It vanished from conversation immediately on release. Lives entirely on cable memory now. The kind of film you caught at 1 a.m. and remembered vaguely for years without being able to name it. Okay, real quick. Frame Time is genuinely trying to hit 1,000 subscribers, and we are going absolutely crazy watching that number. If you're still here and you haven't subscribed yet, please just hit the button. It costs nothing, and it means everything to this channel right now. Amazon Women on the Moon, 1987. John Landis produced this anthology comedy. The same format as Kentucky Fried Movie, same fake television segment structure, with a roster of directors including Joe Dante and Carl Gottlieb, and a cast that includes Carrie Fisher, Steve Guttenberg, Rosanna Arquette, and Ed Begley Jr. The centerpiece is a parody of a 1950s science fiction film called Amazon Women on the Moon, shot in black and white and interrupted constantly by fake commercials and channel changes. But the surrounding segments are where the film finds its strangest material. A dating show where the contestants' entire romantic history is fact-checked in real time. An invisible man who discovers his invisibility only works on his clothes. A roast of a private citizen whose neighbors reveal everything embarrassing about him. It's sharper than its reputation suggests. The Landis touch means the production values are higher than the Kentucky Fried Movie format usually gets, and several segments are genuinely funny in ways that hold up better than most intentional comedies from the same year. Parents couldn't object to the title. The title sounds almost educational. The content was something else entirely, and the VHS found its way into a lot of households on that technicality. The Last American Virgin, 1982. This one is not what you think it is. And that's exactly what makes it the most important film on this list. Boaz Davidson remade his own Israeli film Bekarov Etzlek for the American market and filled the first two-thirds with exactly what the title and the marketing promised. 3 high school guys chasing girls, raunchy comedy, the usual. Then the film does something none of the others on this list attempted. It turns. Gary, the nicest of the 3 guys, falls genuinely in love with a girl named Karen. She gets pregnant by his best friend Rick. Rick abandons her. Gary quietly pays for her abortion, buys her flowers, shows up at her door. She answers the door. Rick is standing behind her. She chose Rick. Gary gets in his car. The credits roll over his face. No resolution, no redemption, no lesson learned. Just a kid sitting in a car, understanding something about how the world actually works that nobody warned him about. And the audience that came in for a raunchy teen comedy got hit with something they weren't ready for. Parents who tried to hide it were protecting their kids from the wrong part. The raunchiness was standard. The ending was the thing that actually stayed with people. 30 years later, it's the one everyone remembers. Because it told the truth when everything around it was selling a comfortable lie. 11 films, all the things your parents didn't want you watching, all of them still there waiting. Hit like, subscribe to Frame Time, and we'll keep going back to the decades when nobody was watching what was on.